I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
Canadians desperate to turn the page on this dark chapter in our history might be relieved today that Justin Trudeau is finally leaving. But what has really changed? Every Liberal MP in power today and every potential Liberal leadership contender fighting for the top job helped Justin Trudeau break the country over the last 9 years.
Trudeau used this particular allegation on the murder of Nijjar for crass political ends. It has had a huge impact on communal relations in Canada. Earlier, you see the Indian community, meaning the Hindu community and the Sikh community used to get along very well. They used to participate in each other's festivals, etc. But now there has been a complete polarization.
Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has announced on 6th January that he will be stepping down as the country's Prime Minister and also as leader of the Liberal Party as soon as a successor has actually been found, somebody to replace him in the party, and the process has begun. And who better to talk about what next in India-Canada relations than Vikas Swarup, retired career diplomat, somebody who served in senior positions, has also served in Ottawa as India's High Commissioner and an acclaimed author too. Many thanks, Vikas, for joining me here in this conversation.
Thank you, Smita, for having me.
If I could begin by asking you, Justin Trudeau's announcement, really his position had become untenable, and it had become a question of when instead of if as to when would the exit happen.
Absolutely. So this has come as no surprise. In fact, the moment Chrystia Freeland, I think, announced her resignation from the cabinet, I think that was the last straw for Trudeau, and his entire caucus revolted. We have heard reports that out of the 153 members of parliament that are there in the Liberal Party, 131 of them had revolted against Trudeau's leadership and had demanded that he step down. So I think the writing was on the wall. Trudeau just took a long time to see that writing on the wall, but finally it was completely untenable for him to continue any longer, and he had to put in his papers.
Before I talk about his current, in fact, tensions with India and all that has gone wrong on the India-Canada relations front, when you trace back and see where his decline began, what do you see as the areas or, the issues where actually his kind of downfall started? Because when he came into power, first as the Liberal Party leader and then became the Prime Minister in 2015, he was hailed everywhere as this young man who would really change the course, the way Canada does politics on the international stage. So where do you think the things started to go wrong?
I think it was pretty much, when his second term started. I think that's where things started unraveling because, first of all, he is, I think, the first Canadian Prime Minister who has broken the consensus on immigration that used to exist in Canada. Because Canada, as you know, is the second largest country in the world, but it has only 36, now it has 40 million people. When I was there, it had 36 million people, which is just too little for a country of that size. And that is why there was a broad consensus among Canadians that immigration is the only way forward. We cannot cater to, all the needs of our population unless we keep getting an injection of fresh blood through immigrants. But because his policy on immigration became really a policy of unchecked immigration, of just taking in as many people as you can without really any scrutiny, etc. That put such a severe pressure on housing, on health, and on the cost of living that as a result, I think that consensus on immigration is broken. That's the first thing. The second thing, I think, is that because of his tax and spend policies, the fiscal deficit is out of control completely. And as a result of that, what you're seeing is rampant inflation in Canada. And because of that, as I said, there is now a cost of living crisis. And the third thing is because you took in so many people that it resulted in pressure on housing. In Toronto, you cannot get a decent house for less than $3,000 to $4,000 now, even a one or two bedroom flat now. And because of that, I think people in Canada felt that enough was enough. We need a fresh change. We need a new leader. And also, if you look at Canadian politics in general, maximum that the Canadian electorate has given any leader is about 10 years. That's what Jean Chrétien had. That's what about Brian Mulroney had. Even Trudeau's father had just 2 terms. So I think Trudeau had reached his expiry date in politics, as they say, the sell-by date. It was just that it took him too long to recognize that. And even while going, I think he has damaged the Liberal Party, because now he will continue as Prime Minister and as the leader of the Liberal Party till the new leader is elected. A new leader will be elected in maybe 2 or 2.5 months. As soon as the new leader is elected, Parliament will get into session. There will be a no confidence motion moved, which means the government will fall, especially if Jagmeet Singh carries out his promise of bringing down this government. And once the government falls, we get into a new election, not in October, but probably in May, which means that the new leader of the Liberal Party will be completely untested. He would be going into this election almost blind, without even the electorate knowing him or her as well as they should have, which means that the pitch has been cleared for his successor. And as per the current estimates, with Trudeau, they were getting about 13% of support, which means about less than 10 seats. Without Trudeau, with somebody else as the successor, the maximum bump they are getting is about 22%, which means they are still way behind the numbers that the Conservative Party has, which is currently at about 45%. So I think the Liberals are looking at a historically high defeat, and probably anti-incumbency is going to weigh them down. And it might take, I don't know, even 1 or 2 terms for them to recover, as we have seen now with the Conservative, as we have seen with we saw with the Labour Party in the UK.
I mean, because you mentioned about the housing crisis and the inflation, costs of grocery has really gone up multiple times in Canada. It's not a surprise then that Trudeau actually lost even Montreal and Toronto in the September elections, the local elections that were held. These were stronghold for the Liberals. So
absolutely. In fact, the constituency in Quebec, the Liberals had been holding on to it since 1993. So just imagine, since 1993, you held on to a constituency and now you lose it in 2024. This tells you the extent of the rebellion against Trudeau and the extent of the anger amongst the electorate, against the Liberals led by Trudeau.
So who looks like a likely replacement, because obviously whoever is coming in right now will be wearing a crown of thorns when it comes to leading the Liberal Party, which could be facing elections as early as May this year instead of October towards the end of the year. So whether it's a LeBlanc, whether it's a Freeland, whether it's a Fraser, and does any of this leader have something very substantially different to offer in terms of their worldview?
No, I don't think so. If you choose the current crop of Liberal politicians, then everybody will say that, look, what were you doing in the cabinet all this while? Why did you not change course when Trudeau was doing the wrong things? So my sense is that opprobrium will attach itself to whoever is the next Liberal leader. Unless they take somebody completely from outside, and one name, as you know, which is being bandied around is Mark Carney, who's the former governor of the Bank of Canada and also of the Bank of England, in fact. He is a noted economist. And people might feel that, he'll be a steady person at the ship, who can guide Canada better at a time of global turbulence, especially against the threat of 25% tariffs that Trump has raised. But I don't think even Mark Carney would be up to the task of actually leading the Liberal Party to a victory. My sense is Canadians have tired, they want change, and under the Conservatives led by Pierre Poilievre, they finally have a leader who can rally a majority of Canadians to his side. Because till now, you see, one of the advantages that Trudeau was having was people were tired of him, but they were not enthused by whoever was leading the Conservative Party. And they always felt that, on issues like abortion and same-sex marriage, etc., the Conservatives were way behind, progressive Canadian attitudes.
So what is it about Poilievre that's clicking then?
So Poilievre, I think, is seen as more of a man of the people and somebody who speaks the language that the people are, wanting to hear. And he's promising lower taxes. He's promising lower housing rates. He's promising better crime management and things like that. And that is a message that is resonating with Canadians at the moment.
What about Trudeau's foreign policy? How much of that is resonating domestically as an election issue right now? And even if the Conservatives come to power, do you think things will change when it comes to flirting with the pro-Khalistan supporting parties or the extremists, or leaders like a Jagmeet Singh? Could that change if the Conservatives were actually to come to power?
So as of now, I don't think Trudeau's problems are stemming from foreign policy. They are stemming mainly from the domestic woes, which you have outlined. Yes, Trump, as I said, was a factor because, Trump has never gotten along with Trudeau. And the way he refers to him derisively as Governor Trudeau, refers to Canada as the 51st state of America, and constantly mocks Trudeau, I think is adding to the conundrum that Canadians have, that if Trudeau is going to continue to lead Canada, then USA under Trump is not going to be an easy nut to crack. So that's one. The second issue, I think, is that Trudeau's foreign policy has been a success at all. If you look at his Indo-Pacific strategy, which was announced with great fanfare a couple of years ago, if you look at that, the twin engines of this strategy were China and India. And with both of them now, his relationship is rock bottom. In fact, China, as you know, even caught hold of 2 Canadian diplomats and held them in prison as long as the Meng Wanzhou case was not resolved in Canada. So I think his Indo-Pacific strategy is in tatters at the moment. There are no engines at all which can power that strategy. His relationship with Trump is rock bottom. And that is why my sense is, when the Conservatives come to power, and again, I think it's not a question of if, it's a question of when the next elections are, if the current polls hold true, because as you know, 1 week is a long time in politics, and there are many a slip between cup and lip. So if other things remain equal, the Conservatives should sweep into power with a very comfortable majority. And there, I think Pierre Poilievre would want to say that, look, Trudeau destroyed the relationship with USA, with India, with China. I'm going to fix all these relationships.
Even within NATO, I mean, he looks isolated when it comes to the optics, whether it's NATO, whether it's G20. How does one manage to destroy all the relations so consistently together? Did he stop listening into critiques? Did he just kind of, encircle himself with the yes minister kind of people? What really happened there on a personal level with him?
No, I think what happened was, you see, he came in at a particular moment. And at that particular moment, Canada was seen as the most open country in the world. They openly accepted all the refugees from Syria and other places, Afghanistan also. And, that solidified his reputation as the genuine liberal leader who is transforming, borders and who's showing that this is a new way forward. He made a very famous statement when he first became Prime Minister in 2015 in an interview to the New York Times, where he said that Canada does not have any mainstream culture or mainstream identity. Canada is the first truly post-national state. Now, that kind of a remark, I don't think you can get away with in the present environment, that Canada has no national identity and that we are basically a nation of immigrants, and you could be a Iranian Canadian, is a Jewish Canadian and Indian Canadian. That kind of a statement is maybe seen as too radical. So I think the world has changed. What has happened was the world has changed. Trudeau also made Canada as the center of liberal wokeness, so to speak. If you look at the policies with regard to transgenders, pronouns, etc., in all the Canadian universities, I think that he took it to a different level. And in general, across the world, I think there has been a reaction to that. Trump's victory in America is but a symptom of that. If you look at Europe now, I mean, Europe, everybody thought has been inoculated against far right because of their experience with Nazism and fascism. But look at Italy now, look at Austria now, look at Sweden now, look at Denmark now, look at Greece now. In all these places now, you are seeing either left, right of center or far right parties in the ascendancy. And that means that the world has changed. And Trudeau, I think, is the odd man out now. And now even he's going to be out.
Yeah, he'll be perhaps part of history soon. Of course, we don't write political obituaries for anybody, and definitely not young leaders. But, because just focusing on the India-Canada ties for the next couple of questions, we saw what happened with the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, the Khalistani separatist, and then Trudeau taking to the floor of his parliament, making a public announcement. But really, there were enough controversies already taking shape since his last India visit. I mean, since his India visit in 2018, where Khalistani voices were a part of his official entourage, that did not go down well with New Delhi, of course. So, today when you see Trudeau exiting now, do you think there is a window of opportunity for a reset of ties between Delhi and Ottawa?
Oh, absolutely. I think there will be a complete reset of ties. I do not think there will be as much of a reset, in the interregnum, when Trudeau is replaced by a new liberal leader. I don't think there'll be a fundamental reset of India-Canada ties. But I think once the Liberal Party itself goes out and you have the Conservatives coming in under Pierre Poilievre, then I think there will be a fundamental reset of the relationship. So there are two aspects. One, of course, is the case now. Canada has arrested 4 people of Indian origin. So that case, I think, will go ahead. No leader of any party, whether it's the Conservatives or the Liberal, will just wish away that case. And I think that case should be pursued to its logical conclusion. But you will see a change in optics. I think that will be the most fundamental change. If you look at the way we have dealt with the accusation that the US made against us and the way we have dealt with the accusation that Canada made against us, you will see that difference in optics. With the US, we decided to cooperate. We set up a high-level inquiry committee, and we are working with the FBI and with their law enforcement agencies. But with Canada, we said nothing doing. This is complete nonsense, fabricated, malicious. We are not working with you at all. So that will change. If I think the Conservatives also extend an olive branch to India, I think that will change. Plus, there is so much of untapped potential in trade and investment. Canadian pension funds have invested close to $80 billion in the Indian economy. And I think that should continue. Right now, they are feeling a bit worried that, given the political temperatures, what they are, whether their investment is safe or not. I think that reassurance will come from the Conservatives as well. So my sense is there is a real moment of a fundamental reset in India-Canada relations once a new party comes to power in Canada. And I think you will see India-Canada relations expand across the board under a new regime.
But the fact that Trudeau chose to make it so personal, I mean, these stories in the Canadian press saying that the investigations point to the accusations going as high up as the Indian Home Minister himself, and then making it so personal against Prime Minister Modi. But because it was an issue of national security, so his party members who otherwise disagreed with him strongly on issues perhaps of domestic approach, economy, on this issue, they had to stand with him and back him. So will the Liberals really be able to take any different position on this? Will it make it less uncomfortable, even if the Liberal leader is a new face?
No, but you see, even the Canadians had to walk back on those accusations. They had to issue a public statement saying that, no, we have never imputed that Prime Minister Modi was aware of this, or the Home Minister was aware of this, or the External Affairs Minister was aware of this. So they had to walk back they had to walk that back. So my sense is that particular court case will continue. I don't think a new Liberal leader is going to take a fundamentally different approach towards India, but then that new Liberal leader, as I said, would have hardly 2 or 3 months at best, before we get into new elections. And if the current opinion polls hold true, then you will have a change in the party. You will have a Conservative coming into power. And there, I think there will be a change because the Conservatives do not have this baggage. They will, in fact, say it is Trudeau who torpedoed the relationship with India, who completely destroyed the Indo-Pacific strategy. We are going to rebuild that relationship. We are going to set relations back on a better track. And yes, this court case will be there. But then as we are dealing with the Americans, the court case is there. But look how the relationship is expanding across the board in defense, in technology, on the economic side. So same approach can be adopted with Canada, that yes, you will continue to handle the court case. And if there are people who are found guilty of this, then they will be punished. But, we should not allow this one aspect to dominate the entire relationship. We should allow other aspects of the relationship to also prosper. And we will continue to ring fence this particular aspect and deal with it in the appropriate manner.
But why the need to fan this Khalistani flame? Because it's a subject that may be emotive, but does not translate into electoral votes, definitely in Punjab, in India itself. It hasn't over the last many years now. In Canada, how does it lead to a domestic vote consolidation? And what could be perhaps a blowback for the Indian immigrant community there, Indian students there, an increase? We've already seen attacks against our consulate, our high commission there. The security of our high commissioner was a huge, serious concern. So what should the Indian community brace up for in the next few months again?
So you see, because Trudeau used this particular allegation on the murder of Nijjar for crass political ends, it has had a huge impact on communal relations in Canada. Earlier, you see the Indian community, meaning the Hindu community and the Sikh community, used to get along very well. They used to participate in each other's festivals, etc. But now there has been a complete polarization. And as we saw with the attacks on the Hindu temple in the Toronto area, in Brampton, and how the Indian flag was being trampled upon during Khalistan rallies, etc. So what has happened is there's now complete polarization. It has become a zero-sum game. If you are pro-Khalistan, then you are anti-India. If you are pro-Hindu, you are anti-Sikh. It's that kind of a thing that is happening now. And that is why I think, this will take a long time for the wounds to heal and for the community to work together as one, as it did in the past, because a handful of Khalistanis should not disrupt the communal harmony that always used to exist between the Indian, amongst the Indian community. So that is a huge damage that Trudeau has caused. And that, I think, will take some time to heal. But the other impacts we're already seeing. Indian students' numbers are plummeting in Canada. Many new Indian students are fearful of going to Canada, don't know what to expect there. Plus, the cost of living crisis, the housing crisis itself is such that the cost of education in Canada itself has gone up tremendously, compared to the attractions of Canada as a country which had much cheaper education compared to the US. I think that attraction is no longer existing. So my sense is the Indian, and now of course they are stopping even the parental visas, etc. The latest decision, as you have seen, even parental visas, etc., will not be very easily available. So the open haven that Canada used to be for immigration, that anybody can just migrate to Canada and get a green card and settle down very easily. I think all that is changing, and that will definitely have a bearing on how Canada is perceived by potential Indian immigrants to Canada.
But if Indian students are less in number going into Canada, does it not impact the Canadian economy too? I mean, it's not that it's only going to be a loss for Indian students who can go head out to other destinations.
Absolutely. By a conservative estimate, Indian students were contributing about $22 billion to the Canadian economy. And many Canadian universities, and I know this personally because I visited about more than 50 Canadian universities, many of them were dependent on the steady stream of Indian students coming into their campuses and sort of aiding their coffers. All that is changing now, and that's why Canadian education is going to be in deep crisis, because how will the universities manage now with the foreign students now not coming in the numbers that they were used to, because they had almost got weaned on a fresh influx of Indian students coming into their campuses and then paying the higher fees, because as you know, foreign students pay a different fees compared to domestic students. So all that is changing, and as a result, I think Canadian universities will also have to cope up with this new set of circumstances.
Just the final question then, Vikas, then moving forward, of course, once the entire political shift happens, new leadership comes in, and I'm not just talking about the interim government, but post-elections, the scenario that plays out, a likely conservative government coming into power. In terms of the reset between India and Canada, we also have that important issue of the pension funds. That's a huge amount that's also sort of has been lying in the cold for a while now because of the tensions in relations. The staff strength in missions has been reduced to almost 1/3. There are no high commissioners following that expulsion of high commissioners on both sides and the expulsion of diplomats. How much of a time do you see in these diplomatic protocols coming back into place, and which are some of the key areas where you think the first steps could be taken to stitch back the ties and heal, literally heal what has been destroyed in the past many months now?
So, Smita, I would call these as the low-hanging fruit. These are issues that can be addressed almost immediately, and the new leader of the Conservative Party can say, he says, look, very serious allegations have been made against India on the assassination of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. We will continue to press India strongly on those judicial matters, but that does not mean that we give up our partnership with a very, very important pole of the multipolar order, which is India, where we share similar values, on multilateralism, on the role of the United Nations, etc. We share many, many common things, and we share, of course, common values of democracy and the parliamentary system and the Commonwealth parliamentary system. So there, I think, the Conservative leadership could announce straight away that we are reopening the frozen trade talks between India and Canada. We are sending back the high commissioners. We are once again resuming normal staffing of the mission so that visa processing does not take as long as it is taking currently. So I think these are all low-hanging fruit, which if the Conservatives are so inclined, they can implement on day one. Just as Trump has declared on day one, he will impose a 25% tariff on Canada. The Conservatives could also announce that on day one, we will repair the relationship with India, we will repair the relationship with the USA.
Why do I feel like, Trudeau actually chose the resignation time just before the swearing-in ceremony of Trump, because he didn't want any more trouble coming his way after all the trouble he has created for himself, for the party, and for Canada. But thank you so much, Vikas Swarup, for a fantastic conversation, which I'm sure our audiences will enjoy and, of course, be enlightened from. And this is an important relationship. We will continue to keep a watch on it. Many thanks for joining me here.
Thank you.
And to all our viewers, do subscribe to the station. The Foreign Policy Dialogue will continue bringing in more and more eminent voices. Make sure to press that bell icon notification so that you know when we are doing a live stream on the station as well or putting out new content. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more.